part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
Hey, what's good? Happy New Year. Happy and merry belated Christmas, if you will. Welcome to Cavs on the Break, an NBA podcast. I'm your host, John Sabol, along with the man, the myth, the legend, Sam Amico from Hoopswire. And man, Sam, you've been a busy guy over the last couple hours here.
Oh my goodness! With a trade rolling in on New Year's Eve, but I prefer it this way. Actually, I'd rather be doing this than as much as I enjoy all the random roster moves that are taking place across the league and writing about this or those things. This is considerably more exciting when you have an actual trade.
Absolutely. And we're going to get into that trade in a second. But first, let me just set the table here for all of our listeners. If you haven't been following us and subscribing to the podcast, do so on Apple and Spotify. Follow Sam at Amico Hoops on Twitter. You can follow myself at John_Sable or right here at our pod at Cavs on the Break. Cavs, well, I had a great Christmas. You and I talked a little bit off camera. You had a great Christmas. It's now behind us. Cavs got a little coal in their stocking with the injury, season-ending injury, torn ACL for Ricky Rubio, Sam. But now they get a late Christmas gift before the new year in the acquisition officially going down as we record this year at noon on Friday, December 31st, New Year's Eve. The deal is done with the Los Angeles Lakers, Rajon Rondo coming to Cleveland. The Cavs only give up Denzel Valentine, which is, I'm happy to hear that was the only thing they gave up because they didn't give up any draft capital. I mean, if they were going to give up any draft capital, it would have been second round picks. And so even you don't give that up for a guy like Rondo, who's been in the league, 16 years now, struggled with the Lakers, but has that veteran presence, had a great year a couple years ago in the Lakers bubble championship season. So, it's a good move. Sam, first off, what do you think of it? At first, I wasn't happy with it because I don't like his attitude, but then you hear reports that he's excited to come here. And if there's a guy to maybe, mold him in the right attitude, could be JB Bickerstaff. What do you think of it? And are you surprised they went for that guy?
At first, I was with you. I was not thrilled with it. And more of it had to do with the way Rondo plays. And I think obviously the guy's a veteran. He's a proven winner. He's been in a lot of winning situations. But when I say how he plays is he obviously can't shoot very well, has never been able to do that. And I thought that they, kind of hoping for somebody who was averaging more than 3.1 points per game. But as I thought about it some more, I thought, you know what? He's a facilitator first. He makes winning plays. He really does. He makes a lot of hustle plays. He's, as you said, 16 years in the league. He's seen and been through everything, been in every type of situation, winning situations, but losing situations with the Kings or the Pelicans or teams like that. So, and the fact that, you learn that he's welcoming this trade to Cleveland to play the role that he knows he's going to play behind Darius Garland. The deal has really grown on me, especially as you said, they're only giving up Denzel Valentine, who's going to be waived by the Lakers. It sounds like as soon as he gets there, they're making this deal to create a roster spot. So I do like this trade. I'm sure that Kobe Altman, Cavs GM Kobe Altman, has explored the market a little bit ahead of this. This wasn't probably the first deal he could make. But it was a deal that made sense for them. They needed a veteran to replace Rubio. They needed a winner, and Rondo is certainly that. And they needed a guy who's hungry and wants to be here. And it appears Rondo is certainly that. I mean, he's looking for the opportunity to have a much larger role here with a team that's been really the NBA's best surprise. And I think that it's a good deal. And I think that once he gets here, he's certainly going to have an opportunity to have kind of a resurgence himself with a team that's having a resurgence.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, Sam. When the injury happened, I instantly went on your website, HoopsWire, and looked at all the available players. Shameless plug right there, by the way.
I appreciate
that. And I looked at the link you posted. Remember, follow Sam at Amico Hoops. And you had all the list of available veterans, rookie guys, whatever, you know, and the list there was not very good. I mean, the available point guards right now in the league, free agent point guards, are awful. There were a few, though, that kind of interest me a little bit. I kind of like maybe Corey Joseph, maybe. And actually, you know, I don't know. I may be getting him mixed up with who is available in terms of a trade. I don't know if he was one of those guys. I've read so much over the last few days. But
yeah, there's so many out there. I think Corey Joseph is available. I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah.
So he was one. Jeff Teague, but Teague in the last few years hasn't done anything for me. I think he's been done for a few years. The only other one that wasn't available but is under contract with the team, the Toronto Raptors, was Goran Dragic. And he's been away for personal reasons. I thought he would have fit perfectly with this team. You know, same kind of age, similar to Rondo. Rondo may have that, he has a championship experience, but I think you couldn't go wrong with either one. I still think maybe I'd give the edge to Dragic, maybe a little, but, you know, you don't know what he's doing off the court. But the fact that Rondo does want to come here is a big plus. Think about it, though. And you know, we talked a little podcast before about how December 15th was when, you know, the players that were signed in the offseason could be traded, and there had been no trades in the NBA. And people forget. Obviously, you don't, because you cover it and you're right in the midst of it. But fans forget that with everything going on with this recent COVID outbreak and all these players and COVID protocols, they are signing dudes off the street that really shouldn't be in the NBA anymore. And like a Greg Monroe out there. I mean, I just don't, you know, great guy, but he just shouldn't be in the league, in my opinion. And the Cavs signed Malik Newman, who was a sixth man on the Cleveland Charge to the team. I mean, that's what we're looking at in terms of guys not being available, and it's hindering the trade market right now. So for Altman and the Cavs to make a move for a guy like Rondo, him buying into wanting to be here now really just goes to a testament of what the kind of sorcery the Cavs are dealing with right now, and great moves. And it just goes to show about how dried up the market really is. And the fact that you get someone like this is kind of a big deal.
Yeah. You wanted to get a veteran. You wanted to get a veteran who, you know, it was currently in the league and not a free agent. Ideally, that's who you wanted to find. And I was surprised they were able to do that. I was looking at the same list you were, and you're right. It wasn't impressed in terms of players who were available at this time, whether it was, you know, a Mike James or a Chris Dunn, or, you know, those kind of guys, Isaiah Thomas, who has since been picked up by the Mavericks. I looked at that list and I thought, if they sign one of these guys, it's really going to be just signing somebody and hoping it works out. And I thought they'd be better off making a trade. At the same time, you didn't want to trade somebody who was an important piece of what you have, what you're building this season. So they managed to avoid that by trading Denzel Valentine, who wasn't a very big part of what they were doing. So I just think that, there were some other possibilities out there. Dragic, Augustine from the Rockets, who's a backup point guard. We heard his name mentioned. You know, I had heard Quinn Cook, who is currently not in the league.
Was he in Russia or something? In Russia? Wasn't he in Russia or in Europe or something?
Russia or China or something. Mm-hmm. So you hear these names of players who, well, they're not going to get you real excited. Now, does Rondo get you real excited? Probably not. But you know that he's been in situations before where he's had to come in and play this role, as he did for the Lakers in the 2020 championship bubble. He's been in these situations, winning situations, and he's a wily veteran. And that's, you know, I don't know about you, John, but I wasn't overly excited when they traded for Ricky Rubio either. You know,
I wasn't either. I think one of the first one of the first podcasts we did together over the summer, we talked about it. I just didn't see why they did it. And boy, were we wrong.
Right. So, you know, theoretically, Rondo could come in. He's not going to score 13.1 points per game like Rubio was, but he can come in and be that facilitator, be that veteran who calms things down as Rubio did. And really, that's what you need, is that type of guy who can do that. Now, he entered COVID protocols at the beginning of the week, so he's going to have to clear that before he can play, which is too bad because the Cavs could really use him ASAP.
And I think the key is too, when Kobe Altman and the Cavs front office evaluated everything, they already saw, like we said, a dry market and no one really out there. Then you get someone like Rondo, who, let's just be honest here, he's past his prime, but the knocks on him over the years has been his attitude and locker room issues. But if you hear that he's coming, which is big, because you got to find a role of a player like a Rondo to fit a Rubio, because Rubio bought in to his role coming off the bench and kind of mentoring Garland, and when Sexton was there, and was going to be that vet coming off along with Kevin Love. So he bought into that role, and Rondo needs to buy into that role. Of course, he's saying all the right things now from what we hear, which is awesome. It's great to see that and hear that. I want to see him actually continue to do that once he gets here and once he starts playing. But that was the biggest key, I think, when Altman is looking at the market too. Any guys that he could get, would they buy into the role? And if he heard and had reached out or whatever, heard through the grapevine or talked to his people, agent, and said that he's going to do it, I think that's probably really what sold his decision on buying him or trading for him, because you can get the production, the experience, but it's also, I think it's that mental side. It's that, okay, you need to accept this role. And that was going to be really hard for the Cavs to find. And right now, as we talk about this, less than an hour ago, when the deal came finalized, it looks like that's the case.
Yeah, well, and that's a big thing too. The willingness to accept. I'm on a team that really the main players are very young. Obviously you have Kevin Love as the oldest veteran now that Rubio is gone, and just you want somebody who's going to show some leadership and accept his role no matter how many minutes he's getting. And I think Rondo is there. I think whatever Rondo, the reputation he had as a younger player, I think he grew out of that quite some time ago. I mean, don't forget, last year he played for a Hawks team that was very similar to the Cavs, and he did very well there.
Good point. Good point.
And there were no issues whatsoever. He was there with Trae Young, and he finished the year with the Clippers, but he started with the Hawks and was really the poster guy for what you want in a veteran coming off the bench. He had a really nice season when he was with the Hawks, and then he played well with the Clippers too. So I'm not too worried about any type of situation where he has an attitude issue. Maybe he had that, 7-8 years ago, but I really think he's been over that for some time, and he's never been a problem in the locker room. So that, in that sense, it's a great deal because you are bringing in a guy who's, again, not only been in those winning situations, but has played with a team, as the Hawks were last year, kind of as a resurging team that's on its way up, a young team, and he should be able to fit in just fine.
That's good to hear. And you bring up a good point. That was kind of years ago in his Celtics days, and then a little bit after that too. I would imagine for any GM or coach, it's still in the back of your mind to at least approach that and think about it. But Absolutely. That is good to know that there has not been that case. And you brought up a great point there about the Hawks. I forgot about that. I mean, I know he finished last year with the Clippers, but he was part of the Hawks resurgence early part of last year with Trae Young. So that's really encouraging to see too. Let's really touch on Ricky Rubio for a second. The Cavs were in talks with him about maybe extending him a week before the injury happening. What a bad luck for him, man. I mean, so now I know we've touched on Rondo. I'm just curious to get your take and maybe what you've heard from talking to people in the league. It's the same ACL he tore, 9 years ago. His market's going to plummet in the free agency this summer. I personally think the Cavs would still like to bring him back. They're going to get him at a bigger discount. What are your thoughts on if the Cavs would either want him back now that he's injured and coming off of a big injury this late in his career? And I would imagine if you agree with it, it's going to come at a much, much cheaper price.
Let's just put it this way. As it stands right now, they do want him back. Now, not because of anything he's done. That could change between now and the end of the season when he becomes a free agent. A lot of it's going to depend on how much the rest of the season goes. If the season continues as it's gone so far, and it's been, when they're all healthy, it's been a great surprise. And Rondo becomes kind of the guy who, boy, he's been great, and replaces Rubio in that sense, then they're going to have to make a decision. And they're probably not going to bring Rubio back after having come off major knee surgery. Will be 32, I think, in October. So I just think that is very much up in the air. As much as you love Rubio, as much as he bought in, it's just going to be very up in the air, because it's going to be based on how this whole season plays out. And as I was telling my kids the other day, we were talking about it, and I said, what you really are rooting for, and this sounds awful, is for the Cavs to think we don't need to re-sign Ricky Rubio, because that means the rest of the season, since he got hurt, has gone wonderfully.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not to say, if they were to say we don't need him back, that's not even to say we're not going to re-sign him. It's just he's going to come back at our price, which is pretty much going to be the case anyway. But what you're rooting for is that the Cavs season continues, Ricky Rubio heals, and if he doesn't come back to Cleveland, that he finds a place to play, and you hope for the best for him. But as far as the Cavs are concerned, it's just like anything. You have no choice but to move on right now. That's all you can focus on. The end of the season stuff, it's all going to be based on how well they play from here on out. And if they play well with Rondo, and Rondo becomes kind of the new Rubio and is the veteran off the bench who has played great and kept things going, then you're going to have a decision to make on him. So I just think we won't even know until the rest of the season plays out. But I would say, right now, yes, the Cavs would love to have Ricky Rubio back, but different price now.
Yeah, injuries like that completely change the dynamic of everything, especially when you're, what's he making now? 16 million this year? Something like that. And then when you have a guy who's re-injuring the same leg, granted it was 9 years ago, I think it was 2012, and then you enter your free agency season coming up here this summer. Okay, so we've touched on Rondo's trade that just going down about an hour ago here as we record this on New Year's Eve. And we just touched on Ricky Rubio situation out for the year, and then also potentially coming back or walking this summer. But what will the Cavs do next as we approach the trade deadline in February? Rumors are starting to swirl in the NBA regarding other available players. Sam's got the latest insights and much more on the Cavs when we return right after this.
Hey everyone, I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Jeremy Powell.
And we are your hosts of The Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the dog pound coverage that you'll need each week to get you ready for kickoff and beyond.
Don't miss our breakdowns of each week's matchups, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we all know, Holly, dogs got to eat.
That's right, Jeremy. Hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the Orange is Oranger Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sabol.
And I'm Scott Sabol, and we're hosts of the Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey, I'm Jason.
And I'm Gary, and we love ball cards.
And if you love ball cards too, good news. You just found your new favorite podcast. From breaks to grading.
And from collecting to flipping, join us on the Ball Card Show.
The sports podcast for the sports collector.
Welcome back to Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. John Sabol here, along with Sam Amico from Hoopswire, writer and founder. And if you want to follow him on Twitter, do so. Great wealth of knowledge and breaking NBA stories at Amico Hoops. If you want to reach out to me on Twitter at John_Sabol. And then the Cavs on the Break, at Cavs on the Break, rather. That's our Twitter handle for this podcast. All right, before we get into the latest rumors, I have a little Cavs trivia question for you. Earlier this week, prior to, I think it was a day before Ricky Rubio went down with that ACL tear, the Cavs extended JB Bickerstaff. Well-deserved. Would we agree?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're talking about a guy who may be
Coach of the Year.
Clearly the early front runner for NBA Coach of the Year.
Sure. So when was the last time the Cleveland Cavaliers extended a head coach?
That is a great dose of trivia that I cannot answer. I would say Ty Lue, maybe?
No.
Lenny Wilkins?
No. When I read this, I first thought Lenny Wilkins, then I thought Mike Fratello, and then I thought Ty Lue. And it was funny because we're on a Zoom call here, everyone listening there, and your eyes like got so big, Sam. Like it's like I just got you.
No idea.
Yeah, you realize like, whoa. The last head coach the Cavs extended, Mike Brown in 2008.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank goodness it wasn't John Beeline.
or David Blatt.
Yeah.
Or Randy Whitman.
Oh my. Yeah. Wow. Well, that says a lot about JB Bickerstaff, and that in the sense that the one thing that I really like about this Cavs team is even when they've had guys injured, guys in protocol, whether it be Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, I think Darius Garland's the biggest blow of any of them, but also Colin Sexton. This team has managed to compete and, really, to me, regardless of who's been on the court, they've been in games 90% of the time. They have been in games and given themselves a shot to win. Mm-hmm. And again, regardless of who's on the court. And to me, that really, a lot of that speaks to JB Bickerstaff. And I think that the system that he has in place, the belief he has placed in his players, they admire him and respect him. And it could be, the guy's a wonderful guy too. He's just a great person. So to me, he reminds me a lot in the sense of the way he has this team's attention and the way they've researched reminds me a lot of, Hall of Fame coach Lenny Wilkins.
Mm-hmm.
But
I knew you were going to say that.
This team looks and the way his personality, Bickerstaff's personality, just has been a perfect mesh. So,
yeah,
the Cavs had a revolving door of coaches there, obviously, too. So this gives them some stability as a franchise.
It is interesting you say that. And it is, congrats on him getting that contract extension. And he definitely deserves it. It is interesting. We talked about this in another podcast a few weeks ago, how this Cavs team is very similar to those late 80s, early to mid 90s teams. It's similar because they have the attention, the defensive tenacity, the buying into the scheme, selfless playing like a Lenny Wilkins team. Then when you look at the roster itself in the way they're constructed, it looks a lot like some of those Mike Fratello teams too in the mid to late 90s after the Price, Doherty, Nance era. When you went into the Vitaly Potapkos, Adrianos Ilgauskas, Sean Kemp era, you had bigs there all the time there. And when I had Mike Fratello on my podcast with my brother, Sabol Brothers on the Baseline here on the Press Play Podcast Network, he mentioned that. And Mike Fratello, and we talked about this before, and every time I watch the Cavs games and I see them play, I can't help but think of when Garland and Allen and Mobley run those pick and rolls. It's got a reminiscence of a Mark Price to Brad Doherty, Larry Nance pick and rolls that they perfected, which was pretty much unguardable back in the day. So it was kind of cool. Okay, so we're talking right now because of what's been going on with the Cavs today on New Year's Eve with the trade of Rondo and Ricky Rubio going down a few days earlier ago with the ACL injury. So now the big question Cavs fans want to know, and why they're listening, is to understand what their approach is going to be, because they're right now poised to make the playoffs for the first time without LeBron, and they could very well be a mid team seed if they continue to play this well. We've talked like a month or so ago, oh, it's going to be a play-in tournament or play-in game. Now it looks like they could be maybe a 4, 5, 6 seed.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're in a win now mode with this deal with Rondo. What other moves do you think the Cavs can make? And what is out there and what are you hearing?
I think the first thing they're going to do is they're going to see how this Rondo thing goes. And if it goes well and the season continues as is, they may, I don't think they're going to make any kind of big splashy move with the Ben Simmons. I saw the other day, a lot of these gambling websites, their odds of Kyrie Irving getting traded, the number one team he's going to is the Cavs.
I didn't see that. That's laughable.
It's the Cavs, then Blazers. I don't think he's going anywhere. I certainly don't think I think that ship has sailed in Cleveland. I don't think that the Cavs want to shake things up enough to go get a Ben Simmons. I don't know that they have the pieces to do that compared to some other teams. And I don't think they want to mess with that, wisely so. I do think they will continue to keep their eyes peeled. They've talked to the Pacers, and I think they will keep their eyes peeled on Karis LeVert.
Yep.
What's going on there? We'll monitor. That's the word that they use when it's like, we're not talking to the Pacers, but we might revisit those talks on Karis LeVert. And the reason I say that is Rondo is not going to bring you almost, presumably is not going to bring you more than 6 or 7 points a game. Now he's going to create points for others and he'll help set up the offense, but you're missing Colin Sexton and you're missing those points. They've been able to overcome that when completely healthy, but part of that was because of Rubio. So I do think that if there's a quote unquote splashy type of deal to be made that the Cavs may be considering, it would be for someone like Karis LeVert, Buddy Hield in Sacramento, who's very available. Now, fans don't get worried. If they were to make one of those trades, maybe Colin Sexton gets moved, but they would not break up this core that's been working. Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, I would even say Lauri Markkanen. Those guys are not going anywhere. Isaac Okoro, maybe, he could be somebody that's in a trade. But if they were to trade Okoro and Sexton or either or, it would be for somebody who would probably have fans excited. It would be for somebody who's explosive, has the potential to score, one of those, have those 30-point nights, is somebody who can fill it up from the shooting guard spot. I definitely think that they're keeping their eyes peeled for, in fact, I know they are keeping their eyes peeled for one of those type of players to become available. Doesn't mean they're going to pull the trigger and they're all desperate to make a trade. But I think that, look, we want to be a top 4 seed in the East. That's our goal now. And it's realistic. It's realistic to have the number 4 seed, the first round of the playoffs, have home court advantage, get into the second round. What invaluable experience it would be for this young team to even taste one round of the playoffs. So they want to make the playoffs. They don't want to be the 8th seed, not with the way this season has started. They want to get in. They want to continue this run. If they can do it, they won't make a deal. They won't feel the need to. If they feel, you know what, in order to keep this good thing going, we've got to give something up, but we're not going to split up this core of Garland, Mobley, Allen, and even to a lesser extent, Markkanen and Okoro. I don't think they want to trade any of those guys. And frankly, Chetty's having a nice year too.
Yeah, he's having a nice little resurgence lately.
I don't think so. They are in no hurry to make a trade. They want to get back to being completely healthy. And if that happens and this resurgence continues, we may see some more lower level trades at the end of the bench, or maybe, 8th, 9th men kind of trades. But I don't, they're not going to break up the core just because. But I would keep an eye on Karis LeVert because I know that the Cavaliers are as well.
Yeah, and that's a guy we talked to a few weeks ago when you mentioned that the Pacers are now approaching rebuilding because they're going to have LeVert, Sabonis, and who else is the third guy?
Miles Turner.
Miles Turner.
They're looking to trade. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think Turner or Sabonis would really fit in with what they're doing. Maybe Sabonis, maybe, but I love Karis
They would,
LeVert.
but the Cavs wouldn't have any reason to trade. And I mean, if you're Sabonis, you're not going to, you want to come to a front court with Allen and Mobley, where you're probably, the third wheel, even though you're an all-star. So
right. I like the kid's game.
It would make sense.
Yeah, I don't think it makes sense either. Who else could be out there that's available? I know you floated around the topic a few weeks ago of who was it? Terrence Ross, was it?
Terrence Ross, and he would be the type of player for the Orlando Magic. He would be the type of player that they could conceivably get for, not much.
Sure.
Not have to give up much. Veteran player, capable of coming off the bench, giving you 10, 14, 16 points a game, has come off the bench in Orlando. It's a bad situation there in terms of, of an older veteran guy like Terrence Ross, because they're rebuilding. They're having a bad season. They're like a college team playing in the NBA for the most part. And Ross is, an older guy who's coming off the bench. He's been a great sport about it, but he would be somebody that you would think Orlando would be willing to part with for not a huge return, that you could give up, and I'm just throwing these names out there, but you could give up the Dean Wades of the world to get a Ross or maybe a Wade and a Windler and a second rounder or anything that make the salary match without disrupting your core. And then you get a veteran guy who, again, not a splashy move, but a move that could help the Cavaliers in terms of getting to where they want to go in the playoffs, and a guy who could be around for a few more years too, and knows his role, is happy to be here, those kind of things. Ross is a name to watch. Obviously, I talked about LeVert, and I really don't think anybody else that comes to Cleveland would be, again, a big move that would have fans jumping out of their seats. I think it's worth watching Buddy Hield with Sacramento. The Kings would want more than the Pacers would want for LeVert, or the Magic would want for Ross. But again, Hield is available. He kind of fits a need for the Cavs. So I think that if they could get somebody like him, again, without disrupting the core, he's a name to watch moving forward as well.
What about a guy like Malcolm Brogdon?
Well, I don't think he can be traded because of the deal he signed. He can't be traded this season.
Okay.
But I love Malcolm Brogdon. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the NBA. Not an all-star, but just a guy who really fits the team concept well, while is a very nice individual player.
And he's making $20 million this year with the Pacers. I just thought of him because you look at Indiana, if they're going to tear this thing down, that would be a guy. I don't know. It's maybe not necessarily a big need. He's more of a point guard, but he could play wing in the shooting. He could play a shooting guard role too. But I do think LeVert.
He's a guy they want to keep, by all accounts. He's the guy that they want to kind of build this around.
Yeah, he's got one more year left on his deal next year in Indiana. You know, it's funny. Think about this for a second. Excuse me. No, he's got a few more years left on his deal in Indiana. You know, the Cavs, if they're trying to go to the playoffs, here's another good trivia question for you. You know, we know the last time the Cavs.
I hope I do better on this one.
Yeah, we all know the last time the Cavs went to the playoffs without LeBron was, right?
1999?
97, 98. That was Sean Kemp's first year.
Okay.
So when was the last time the Cavs won a playoff series without LeBron?
Well, that would have been 1993.
Yes.
Right?
You
Mike
got it
Fratello,
right.
Mark Price. Yeah. Then they got swept in the second round by the Bulls in 93.
Yeah, those years were pretty brutal. Yeah.
They just couldn't. They were like everybody else. They couldn't get past Chicago.
But they were
if
also
Michael Jordan had been in the East.
Yeah, they were also badly hurt that year too in '93. If you go back,
yes,
yeah.
So that was the last time they won a playoff series without LeBron James. Was almost 30 years ago.
Yeah. So all you listeners out there, because I would assume most of our listeners are young, the Cavs haven't done anything in the playoffs since before you were born. Think about it. I'm assuming our majority of our listeners are under the age of 30. And obviously some of our older ones too, my age, your age, whatever.
I know what surprises me is we have some very passionate Cavs fans who I know respond to me on Twitter or via email or mention the pod or whatever that are otherwise retired. And
really? Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess
I grow out of the Cavs or sports as you get older sometimes because so many other things get in your way. But we have having been a team since 1970, they have built a long and very passionate fan base.
They have. And I guess I don't mean to cancel out some of our older viewers or listeners. I didn't know a lot of the older ones would have listened to that if they're on the podcast train yet. But if you are, we thank you so much for your listenership. We really do. It's just kind of a funny stat because
they just tuned you out, John.
They just tuned me out. Yeah, they canceled me. But I guess I'm going for more on the Twitter side because we get a lot of traction. You get a lot of your traction on Twitter, and so this podcast account gets traction on Twitter. I do too, and the majority of the Cavs fans, like young Cavs fans that are active and are buying into this team. Same thing with the Browns. Oh my God. So many young Browns fans don't even know the struggle that plagued this franchise before they moved, and all that jazz. So, I'm going off by that, but by all means, we appreciate everyone that listens, but I looked at that trivia question. I looked it up. I told my brother about that and we were just like blown away when you really think about how long ago that was. So, the Cavs trying to build this is a big deal this year, what they're doing, obviously, right? They're good again. They're exciting again. People are watching, the Romo Fijo is packed, the Cavs are in the top 5 in attendance, so they've got the attention from people. They came out of nowhere. No one expected them to be this good. You and I didn't. When we did our first podcast together over the summer, we were like, okay, that first stretch of the year, they're going to, blow. And then they're going to, lucky to get 20 some wins. And I'm glad they're proving us wrong. And I'm glad because, this is an exciting and fun team to watch. And it's good to see Dan Gilbert and Kobe Altman buy in right now and go win now because they make this move for Rondo. And so, they're trying to, add to it. Yeah. And I'm excited. They're going to make another move. You just, alluded to it. They have to get wing depth at some point. If there's one thing that's shown this year is that you lose Colin Sexton and Ricky Rubio, your first and second string point guards, if you will. I mean, I know Garland's a point guard, but you get these first two guys there. The depth is key, and they need to add more to that depth. And, some guys are stepping up. He's meant Chetty. Chetty's had a nice little resurgence too. Kevin Love's had a phenomenal resurgence this year. I heard, I forget who I heard this from, that Kevin Love, I know he's only playing like 20 some minutes a game, but he's having the most efficient season of his Cavaliers career dating back to his last 2 years in Minnesota. Granted, he's playing less time, but that just shows how everything is going so well for him and a lot of things for the Cavs, despite these recent injuries. So the trade market is definitely going to heat up here as we get into February. Hopefully this COVID outbreak here kind of runs its course. Hopefully everyone listening here is staying safe and staying healthy and they can get these players out of these COVID protocols because that's what's kind of really holding back the trade market.
Yeah, they miss Garland and Allen very much. I mean, that's kind of their price and Doherty, and that's really going to impact you. And then you lose Rubio to boot. That's just a lot to overcome because those are that was the heartbeat of what you were doing this year. So presumably good, Garland and Allen are going to be back very shortly. And they'll be back on course. You just got to survive until they do. And you don't have to keep winning games. You got to maybe steal one, but you just want to make sure you have that competitive fire and that belief while those two guys are out. And Rondo obviously is going to be another week away from actually getting in uniform once he clears COVID protocols. So it's a tough situation for them right now. But the great thing is JB Bickerstaff has the guys who are available and in uniform playing with so much heart and, really putting a team on the floor that the fans can be proud of and that the franchise can be proud of. And I'm with you, John. I thought the Cavs were going to probably stink again. I thought the roster was clunky. I thought it was too young. I thought, here we go again. They're another year away. But when we predict those things, that's not what we're rooting for. We're rooting to be wrong, And
now fans may misconstrue that because everyone loves to attack Cleveland media members that cover all three teams and saying you're rooting for that. And it's like, well, no,
people attack me for stuff I'll say on the Browns, and they're like, "Oh, the Browns beat writers." I'm like, I don't even cover the Browns. I'm just a fan like the rest of you, and that's what I want to be.
Fans are fans, and they have their right. But
fan is short for
fanatic.
Mm-hmm. And I couldn't be more grateful for the fans who love the Cavs. And I mean, they keep me in business. So,
and I got to say, we all root for these teams, that we grew up watching, but just like fans that sit at home on their couch with their buddies and their family, drinking a beer, ripping on the team or whatever. I mean, we can rip on the team just like they can. It just sometimes fans think that we're doing it because we don't like them. We're doing it because we're with you in a lot of ways.
We're passionate.
We're passionate. It's passion.
All passion. And whenever you have passion, emotions will come out. And I try to be careful because I don't ever want to be in a situation where it's like, well, I wish I wouldn't have said it because it sounds like I'm ripping that team or that guy or whatever. I wish I wouldn't have said that. But sometimes passion will make you say things that you're like, well, maybe that's not entirely true. So, never. I mean, as people who are from Cleveland, couldn't be more excited about the way this team has been playing.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited too. This is going to be a good run here on the final stretch. Well, we got to get to the All-Star break first. We're not there yet. And I got to say, as we get to this stretch run here, once we get through the new year and through the All-Star break in February, keep this in mind, listeners and Cavs fans. Your Cavaliers have the easiest remaining schedule in the league.
Isn't that great news considering how much they've done so far?
I know it's fantastic, especially that stretch they had there in November and still kept those games tight and close against the Warriors and the Nets and the Suns. And that was with like a shell of their team missing key guys. So yeah, it's all good news for the Cavs going forward here. Despite losing Ricky Rubio for the year, Rajon Rondo, now a Cleveland Cavalier. We'll wait to see when he makes his debut. Is he still in COVID protocols, Sam? I think I'll wrap it up here. Anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, I'm with you. I think that what they've built and what they've shown so far is giving fans reason to believe in a regular season full of fun, a totally unexpected playoff berth, and a really bright future.
Absolutely. We're going to continue to see what they do here as we get into the new year. Remember, you can follow Sam Amico at Amico Hoops on Twitter. Read him at HoopsWire. You can catch us here on Twitter on this Cavs on the Break pod at Cavs on the Break. You can follow me at John_Sabol. If you haven't already, listen and subscribe to Cavs on the Break NBA podcast on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen to podcasts. That'll wrap things up here on Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. Sam, have a good New Year's Eve, man.
All right, you too. I will talk to you in 2022.
I'll see you next year. That's a lame dad joke.
Well, we're lame dad, so it works.
There we go. All right, thanks for listening, everyone. Have a safe and happy New Year. Mike Breen, take us out.
Congratulations, Cleveland. Your decades-long wait is finally over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.